Welcome back. The Young Center for Immigrant Children's Rights is a champion for the best interests of children who arrive in the United States from all corners of the world. They serve as trusted allies for children while they are in deportation proceedings, advocating for their best interests. Ari Cannavino, a New York volunteer coordinator for the organization, joins me now to discuss. Ari, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, can you tell us a little bit more about your organization and its overall mission?
Yes, so the Young Center, we work tirelessly to advocate for the rights and the well-being of all immigrant children, specifically those facing deportation or detention policies who are seeking to reunify or maybe return to home country.
Now, what are the primary challenges that unaccompanied immigrant children face while in federal custody?
They are actually facing quite a lot right now. As you maybe remember yourself from being a teenager, from being adolescents, you naturally have a lot of things and a lot of emotions going on through that. Now add in that you are disconnected from your home, you're disconnected from your family, you're disconnected from your culture, and a lot of times you're disconnected from your language. And you're navigating a legal system that has been set up for adults and is very confusing for adults. So being put through all of that and not having any best interest rights is incredibly overwhelming and can really make these children feel very isolated.
Now, just for my own clarity, are these children alone, like no parents are with them? Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
So these children either arrive at the border unaccompanied, so without any adults, any trusted adults, whether that be parents, tias, aunts, uncles, any sort of family member, or they are separated at the border. So there's two different situations that we really face. A large portion of them are actually arriving at the border unaccompanied.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for clarifying that because I think that a lot of us are lucky that, for the most part of our lives, we can kind of go through certain experiences with our parents or trusted adults. And so, kind of to understand that there are children that don't have this in such a scary, environment, it's really eye-opening. So thank you for, clarifying that.
Thank you for asking.
Now, how does the center ensure the rights and well-being of unaccompanied children in federal custody? Like, what is that process like?
Yeah, so actually our volunteers, who is my kind of purview at the Young Center, are a large part of that. So we have Young Center volunteers that meet with these children every single week. And what we do is we have one volunteer with one child, and they're only meeting that one child for 1 hour every single week. And they're playing games, they're talking to them, they're sometimes watching football matches or soccer matches, and really getting to know their story, developing a relationship with them, becoming a trusted ally. And then we at the Young Center, with that child's consent, will take that information to advocate for the best interest. So the Young Center side on our staff as case supervisors who work directly on these cases are either from a legal background, like lawyers, or they're case supervisors and really have that psychology background. Though they are not lawyers or psychologists to these children, they're able to use this information to best guide the children. They use that in that child's advocacy, and then if there's things needed beyond that, we actually have a policy team, a technical assistance team as well, that is all working together to both make each child's case safer, but then the cases for every single child easier and have access to more resources.
Now, I definitely want to take a moment to highlight, some of the programs or the work that you do to support those children with disabilities or those at risk of aging out of the system. Can you tell us a little bit more about that effort?
Yeah, so on top of all the other confusing things going through that, these children are coming from various backgrounds. Some of these children are disabled and are facing various disabilities or even illnesses, and some of them are about to age out of the system. So while we do not actually offer direct services to these children, what we do is we work with our policy team and our advocacy team, and we make sure that we are advocating to get these individual children resources. So whether that might be disability resources, making sure the supervisors at the facility and maybe a potential sponsor has the medical information that they need to best care for that child, as well as children aging out, making sure they have resources to go into housing, to go into that adult world in the United States, in a new country for them, with as many resources as they need, job training, college resources, anything that they can utilize to become their best selves here in this new country. We
Yeah.
also have, sorry,
No, it's okay.
we also have a wonderful person on our policy team who directly advocates for children with disabilities, and she uses her own experiences to really make sure all of our children are given the resources they need.
Now, I definitely want to take a moment to highlight language barriers for anybody. Even in New York City, where there's tons of languages, sometimes it could be a barrier if you don't understand the person next to you. So I could imagine that experience is definitely heightened for a lot of these children. How does the Young Center address the needs of children who speak Indigenous languages and ensure that they kind of keep that close to them?
Yeah, so working with children and advocating for children who speak Indigenous languages is not an uncommon experience for us. So we try to really do a multi-pronged approach to all of this. We both take external stakeholders and organizations. We recently worked with the International Mayan League to both educate our team and our volunteers to have that cultural sort of empathy and those skills best suited to work with children. But we also just make sure that we are bringing in volunteers that speak these Indigenous languages to try to communicate to these children in their language and let them use their own words. Now, if we have a shortage of people who are able to communicate with that, we utilize legal interpretation services, and we make sure our volunteers have some sort of cultural connection to these children, or maybe some sort of skill set that can best help them, professional or personal lives that can best help these children. So there is still a strong connection, and then we help them use this interpretation services so that child is only having to speak in their language so they can tell us their story as best as possible. Our advocacy team also really advocates for these children to have these resources in their different situations, in the different shelters that they might be, wherever they're residing, so that they continuously are able to communicate and make sure that their needs are being met.
Now, I definitely want to highlight that volunteers are a huge part of the organization, and I understand that there's an upcoming volunteer child advocate training. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, with pleasure, because that is my personal favorite. So actually this upcoming weekend, the 7th and the 8th, we are doing an in-person advocacy training right here in the Bronx at the Andrew Friedman home, who we've worked with in the past. And with 2-day training, it's multi-pronged, it's a little bit fun. We make sure there's food and snacks and lots of coffee and lunch. And we also make sure we're bringing in experts to train our volunteers that can be as prepared for this position and best work with these children as best as we can. Outside of that, we will have another training if you can't make it to this one, if you are interested in the spring. So just go onto our website, and if you look at our volunteer portal, it has all of the information. The main things we ask is from our volunteers is that they be able to speak another language. That's a really big thing for us, and also be over the age of 21.
Now, can you describe the role of a volunteer child advocate, and what are some of the qualities and skills that you're looking for in potential volunteers?
Yeah. So there is some hard set rules and boundaries that we really just need our volunteers to do because they are working with very vulnerable populations. Some of it is legality, like being over 21. Some of it really has to do with their skills as well. We ask all of our volunteers to be either advanced or fluent in a language outside of English. It can be any language, though we are looking for certain languages like Spanish, like French, like indigenous languages like Achi and Quechua. And so we're really looking out for those kind of skills. And then we're comparing that with their life skills. Has this person worked with children, or do they have children? Do they have that experience? Do they have maybe some hard professional skills? Like maybe they were a psychiatrist. Maybe they worked in that sort of field for a while. Maybe they worked with children in various sort of refugee programs, or even adults in refugee programs. A lot of the volunteers we see too are the children of immigrants. So they have that personal story and that connection as well. And they utilize that to help children coming through. So it's multi-pronged. It's very kind of holistic that way. We're looking at all of these people attributes and then using that to best match them with cases in the future.
Now, as you mentioned, this is a very vulnerable population. One, because they are, immigrant children, but because they're children just in general. Can you just talk about some of the precautions that you take, just to ensure that the children feel safe and, that this entire experience is almost welcoming for everyone involved?
Yes, so technically we do also make sure there's lots of background checks that everyone goes through, everyone is safe and everything like that. And then emotionally as well, we make sure all of our volunteers are prepared through trainings and through continued education to be able to work effectively with children who are facing various backgrounds. Everything we do is putting the child first as well. So we make sure anything that we ask our volunteers to do with children is putting that child first. So we have a little closet at our center, or we encourage people to kind of bring in things that they enjoy doing, like making bracelets. I actually am showing off one that a child I worked with made. I think it's lovely. Or painting nails, or listening to music, or just, you know, a lot of messy fans right now looking up little sports highlights and soccer highlights online to really make sure that we're allowing the child to talk. And part of that as well is allowing the child not to talk. There are some times that the child will be like, I really cannot talk to you today. And we respect that because we're here for them. This is their time. We don't want to pressure them to say anything they're not comfortable with. So just hanging out with them, knowing that we're here if they need us, but they're not being forced to speak with us.
And I think that's so important because we're, you know, children, teenagers, sometimes they can be moody or they don't want to talk. And you may go in thinking like, I'm going to have this amazing experience. And they're like, I don't feel like talking today. And I think it's amazing that you kind of acknowledge like that can also happen as well. So, you know, I think that's pretty cool. You know, with that, I also want to talk about, you know, just in general, how can the community continue to engage with and support the Young Center's future efforts and, you know, the work that they're doing to support these children?
Yeah, so we actually have multiple resources that we encourage people in the community to use. So you can definitely look online and become a volunteer. We are continuously looking for volunteers. We see about 18 new cases in New York City throughout the boroughs every single month. And we want to match volunteers to those every single month. So I think one of the important things to know is that if you feel like you might be able to help, I can tell you, you can help. You can actually kind of take all that confusing information you might be hearing and wondering how you can involve. You can go and work with a kid 1 hour every week and really just help that one child. And sometimes that's all that needs to happen. If you're not maybe able to do that at that time, or you want to give back in other ways, we have a Waymakers race, the Elizabeth Frankel Waymakers race coming up, who is named after one of our employees, or former employee, who is from the New York area. She was born and raised here, and she was a fierce advocate for children's rights and immigration. She helped set up all of our offices throughout the years, and we're kind of honoring her and her advocacy and helping others kind of play into that advocacy as well by grounding themselves in a child's journey through walk, right? These children a lot of times have to walk here. So as a fundraiser, as a means to, you know, create and generate more money, we ask that people do this race and ground themselves with these children's stories. And it is online, so you can, pun intended, go at your own pace, walk, run, wheel, whatever is utilized for you. Beyond that, just share our mission, share our values. You don't know who it's going to reach that could really help a child, that unaccompanied immigrant children that we are working with right now.
Well, you know, with that, I want to thank you so much for joining us and telling us, you know, about the really important work that you're doing to protect these children. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
If you would like to volunteer with the center, please go to the website on your screen below. We've come to the end of our show today. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us and you, the viewers, for tuning in. If you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the recable cast at 5 and 10 p.m. on Optimum Channel 67 and Verizon Fios Channel 33, or watch anytime on the web at BronxNet.org. You can catch a brand new episode of Open with Darren Hymie on Wednesday and with Rena Valentine on Friday. I'm Kibin Alleyne, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.